Welcome back to It Starts Now, the happy hour of finance and business. My name is Stanley, and I am so excited today. This is going to be an amazing show. I have my co-host, Christine. She's going to come in and chime in on so many things, add so much value. She's a dear friend of mine for I don't even know how many years, but we're here together. And please, Christine, introduce yourself. Let the people know what's going on.
Hi, I'm Christine, and I'm Stanley's friend for many years. And his co-host on It Starts Now. But enough for my introduction. We're really here focused is on Lauran Morgan, Esquire. She came here all the way from Phoenix, Arizona. So everybody, just welcome our guest here. She's a very accomplished attorney, and she's here to share all her knowledge on trademarks, how it is relevant to growing your business and starting your business. And we're just really happy to have her right now. Her background is pretty accomplished, actually. So her firm has been voted as one of the top 10 solo firms in Arizona. And we're really happy to have her here. So just sit back, relax, and take in all the information because it's going to be very valuable. So let's give it to Lauran to maybe give us a little background on herself.
There you go, Lauran.
Hey, what an introduction. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so excited. Well, how do I follow up with that? That's so good. So my name is Lauran Morgan. I am a business attorney from Phoenix, Arizona, licensed out of Phoenix, Arizona. I specialize in entity setup, contracts, intellectual property, copyrights, and trademark. And I am the founder and attorney behind Activated Law. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Yes, straight off the plane, coming in to the city that never sleeps. Here we are doing this, and it's great. Y'all giving me the energy to be up to do this. So yes.
Yeah. Your flight got delayed, and then
flight got delayed. I didn't even tell you guys. Did I tell you? I had a car accident today. It was a really long day. So yeah, but we're here.
We're even more grateful to have you. Thank you.
It was a very long day.
Talk
very,
about
very long day.
Superwoman.
Yes, turbulence, all the stuff. But we are here.
Well,
yes.
we are so happy to have you here today. And one of the things that we want to touch on automatically, because we want to dive in, is trademark, which is why you're here. This is your specialty. Mm-hmm. So one of the questions that we have is, number one, what is a trademark and why is it so valuable? Why do people need it?
Oh, that's so good. So a trademark is basically any type of mark associated with your brand. There's 5 categories in particular. It can be a business name. It can be a business logo. It can be a slogan, a hashtag, and or a color. There are a couple of different variances as well. And anything literally, when you think of your brand, any mark associated with that is going to be a trademark and or a service mark. Most people don't talk about service mark. They're one and the same. Service mark literally just means you offer a service versus a product, which is the trademark. But yeah.
So when you say by service mark, can you elaborate more on that?
Absolutely. So for instance, I have a law firm, and so I am a service-based industry. And so if I were to, for instance, have trademarked my company name, Activated Law, my company logo, I would technically have a service mark versus a trademark. It's just a technicality. It's still considered a trademark, but if we want to get technical, which lawyers should be technical, details matter, people, I would say that it would be a service mark because I'm a service-based industry.
Interesting.
Listen, something new today, huh?
Yeah.
What happened? We didn't know that.
So now let's say, for example, now I have a slogan and I have a logo. Mm-hmm. Why is it important to trademark both? Or is it important?
It is very important to trademark both. And the reason behind it is, like I mentioned, it's around your brand, right? Especially for entrepreneurs starting out, we sacrifice so much to get our businesses off the ground. We're building it and it catches fire. It's known in the community around what it is associated with. And if you don't protect that, somebody else is like, oh, this is catchy. This is cool. It sounds good. I'm going to take it and put it with my business, right? So all of the effort, all of the time, all of the sacrifice, right? The things that we can't put a monetary value to, right? Time with our family, time with our friends that we sacrifice to be putting into this brand and investing in and building it up. Now someone else gets to come and basically take your work and claim to it because you've already done the legwork and the footwork and continue to build off of it, right? So one of my favorite examples that I always use is Nike, because they have done a phenomenal job at executing their marketing strategy. It really goes hand in hand, trademarking with your marketing strategy. But when we think of swoosh, everyone knows of Nike, right? When you think of just do it, Nike, that's their brand. And they have programmed us in a sense. When you hear those phrases, when you hear those words, you know that you are associated with Nike. Hands down. You never need to hear Nike, never need to see Nike. You never need to, you just know it is associated with them. Even down to some of the icons that they use, right? Michael Jordan, LeBron James, we know that they are hands down associated with Nike when we see them. That is the importance of branding. And so what you're focused on when you are talking about trademarking is your brand. What are you building? When you hear it, when you see it, what does it make you think of? And it should make you think of our brand. And that is what we are protecting. That is what we are trademarking. And they give you the protections to enforce that.
So interestingly enough, I have a little trivia about the Nike swoosh.
Come on!
I don't know if you all know, but it was actually designed by a graphic designer, and I think she was only paid like $30 or $35 to design that swoosh back in the day. And now look at how it blew up.
Right.
But they protected that.
Listen, for millions of dollars.
And
millions now.
Billions.
Seriously.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's really important. Like something that you only paid a certain amount of money for becomes so valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So curiously, you talk about Nike. It's a worldwide brand, right? And you know, people want to trademark, but how far does your trademark protection go? When you talk about trademarking, is it cover just on a state level? Is it covered federally? Is it covered internationally? If you could speak on that a little bit.
Absolutely.
Really helpful,
Yeah, that is a great question. It kind of applies. And you said something before that was really good. Y'all did your homework. That was a great trivia question. Hey, I like it. I like it. Alex, for 200, please.
I would have
but one thing that you said really quick before I answer your question was talking about Nike and how they paid someone $30 to $35. So that is really important to make sure that you own the rights of someone who is actually producing your logo or your trademark. A lot of people go to Canva these days or other websites. I can't think of what they are called right now, but there are websites where you can go to and you put in your business name. They'll even create a business name for you these days. It's important to make sure you're reading the terms and conditions of those, because sometimes you don't own those. And then you want to go ahead and trademark it. And actually you're trademarking something that you don't own. Right? So if you're paying someone for it, you want to make sure that you have a license agreement where you are getting full use of that license, where you can go ahead and register the mark. Canva people that are creating logos, you don't always own that. And so people a lot of times want to trademark their rights from Canva, and it's too simplistic. And the elements that they use are not going to qualify for it to be unique enough as a trademark, which is so important, right?
So for those people that don't know, can you please explain what Canva is? It's a website where you could design certain things.
Yeah, and honestly, that's once again, get you a marketing and branding professional, because they help bring all of this full circle. I'm not even fully aware. I use Canva for my contract templates, or
I use it for a baby shower.
I use it as well.
Invitations.
So,
I'm like, you just use it for different things. Yeah, to create. So my branding, my logo and things like that, which I hired actually a branding person to create it personally for me and things like that. But she created templates for me. So when I create contracts for my clients, I'm sending out letters professionally for them. My stationery basically is within Canva. And I can go and take my context of text that I'm preparing for my clients into Canva, so it comes out professional on my stationery.
Right.
So that's what I use Canva for. I know it can be used for invitations. Yeah. It's basically a platform, I would say, where people can create artistic, not just artistic, but business professional use of different things, posters, flyers. They do a lot of things. But even when you, depending if you have a Canva membership, right? They give you different royalties, right? The little crown will show up showing that you can use this for free or you have to pay for it. But even if you go and you click on it, they have different restrictions around how you can use that. And they'll even ask you that when you're downloading it. How are you going to use this? Because the license that they're giving you is based upon how you plan on using it. So so many technicalities that a lot of people don't know about, and they're downloading things and putting it on their website, and the actual artists that Canva hired to create it, that they only license Canva to use and sell to you for free. Once you start making a profit out of that, putting it on your website, putting it out for posts, and people are coming and paying you for your business and service, you've now had an infringement upon their copyright. Actually, this shifted from trademark. It's not a trademark, it's a copyright. Right. You've infringed upon that, right? And so you want to make sure that that's clear and that you're not doing that.
And this is very common if you use Shopify
for
images. There's limitations how many uses you can use it.
Yeah.
So you have to be very cognizant of this, because you could be, you can find legal repercussions if you really don't read it.
Yeah. And it's expensive. Copyrights are so cheap to register. They started at about $35, $50, but lawsuits pending those started about $5,000 minimum. Minimum. And that's with me negotiating it down for you, getting it on a payment plan. They are very costly and expensive.
So what you're saying is that it's best to pay the price initially to protect yourself.
Do not cut corners. The foundation of your business and what you set out to accomplish is very important. The legal foundation of your business, you cannot compromise on it. You can't.
Yeah. So one of the things that Christine and I was talking about, because we were so excited that you were coming in, that we were thinking about what are some of the common mistakes that people make when it comes to trademark.
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to her question that she asked me a minute ago, and I'm going to tie it into your question.
Go ahead.
Y'all see me with these details and like bringing it all back. Hey. Okay, but you had a question about the different, basically it's your jurisdictions, right? So on a state level, a federal level, and an international level, different laws apply to all above. And so there are state trademarks. I do not recommend them unless you plan on having a brick and mortar and staying in one place. I have an example for this. It's a very cool one. I'm from Chicago, and so in my home state of Illinois, there is a Burger King that exists that is not owned by the franchise. However, they registered a state trademark or trade name, if you will, in the state of Illinois prior to the franchise registering it federally.
Wow.
And so
didn't know that.
Yeah, Google it. It's there. It's so cool.
Game.
Yeah. Right. And so they can still exist right now in the state of Illinois. And I can't remember the parameters exactly, but within a 3-block radius or something like that, the actual franchise Burger King cannot set up a shop within their radius to be in competition with them because they have a state. This is where, for once, the state will actually trump federal. Their state trade name has them protected, and Burger King can't compete with them. And of course, they've offered them money and things like that. It's a small family-owned business. They're not in it for the money. They won't sell it, and they still exist to this day. But that's an example of a state name. Most businesses these days are on the on the internet. They have websites. They are getting people from all over. So I usually don't recommend for my clients to go with state names because it's not going to give them the protection they need. It is limited to the state that you register in, and it's very cumbersome to go to every single state and try to do it. You might as well just get a federal one, right? Which is the most common application that I fill out for my clients. Federal protects you in all 50 states. It protects you in the United States. Essentially, if someone comes in with your name in your category, which I'm not going to get too in-depth and dense. It's over 41 categories, basically, for your field and industry, where you have to register your mark for use, right? So if someone coexists with you in that field and mark, or they're trying to register with it, they will shut it down if they're in the same category as you on a federal level. So it helps you get protections. An example of this is the car Lexus, right? As an attorney, we have a software called LexisNexis. Often they just shorten it and it goes by Lexus. Well, both of them have the same name. So technically, if we just go based off of confusion of consumers, the same name, they would say it's rejected. Because they are in different categories, though, they can coexist even with the same name. So that's a great example of that. And then most people need
Delta
to have
faucets.
Airlines. It's so many of them. Honestly,
there's
it's a lot of them. Yeah. And so that's one of the caveats and loopholes. A lot of people are saying, well, I had someone email me the other day and they said, well, hey, we did some preliminary search on trademarking. We want to hire you to do the application, but we found that our name was being used by someone else. Well, automatically I knew what they wanted to do and what the category was registered in. I knew it wouldn't be a conflict, right? Now I haven't gone in and done the other search, so I couldn't advise them of that just yet, but I knew initially what their concern wasn't really a concern because they weren't in the same category. So that's the federal level. And federal, like I said, applies for all 50 states. If you do plan on going internationally, each country has their own trademark application. So one I always recommend for people, depending on the field that they're going on, is China. Go ahead and lock down your trademark in China, people, because we know they are the greatest imitators of the world.
Yeah.
But I don't think they really care, though.
They actually don't. So
so it's
I don't know if you knew this about me. I studied in China, actually. I did international law and studied there while I was in law school because I knew I wanted to do international business and law. And so I worked
international business.
Listen, it really is. I've done contract negotiations for my clients over there and got several deals out after law school, even after studying there. They do not care. It is a standard to them. It's like a respect factor. We respect and we honor your work so much that we are going to replicate it.
Right.
But to us, it's like, hey, you ripping off my brand and you getting money for it, and I need you to pay me for this.
It's like sampling.
Yeah, it's not seen the same.
To a different level, though.
It's not. But they do have international trademark laws that you can register your trademark over there and enforce it. It can get really pricey and expensive, so I definitely recommend that people sit down, that they have a strategy for it, a plan, because once you do a trademark application and register it, which is essentially, you were saying some of the common mistakes that people don't do, is that they don't register their trademark. That's the first thing I would say. Just do the research, make sure you register it, and a huge question I get is when, what's the timing for it? And it's not really set action.
Not to cut you off, that was going to be my next question, because
look at
the timeline. Because it is very important, because in people's mind, they assume, like, because I apply automatically within the next week, things are going to go through.
Listen,
but then
I wish.
Yeah, but there's steps, right? Go ahead.
There are steps to it. So the good news is, from the date that you apply, once they approve the application, and if it is approved, it is backdated to the date of the application. So you do have some protections from the date that you apply. However, the trademark application process is extremely saturated right now for review. It takes about 4 to 5 months just for them to get assigned to an attorney for them to reply to you at all. You're protected through that process, but it does take some time. And so, it can be a lengthy process. You just be anchored in and just stand in there for the long haul. That's what I tell my clients, because it's a little bit of a process.
To circling back, when you were talking about legally protecting yourself internationally, nationally, statewide. So, I mean, I would wonder why people would just do it statewide. Is there like a big cost difference? Like, what's the big cost difference between statewide, national, and internationally? Like, what would you be able to tell us about that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. There definitely is a price difference. Trademarking in and of itself can get really expensive because you have to pay, like I mentioned before, for the categories, right? We also have to pay for the marks. In the very beginning, when you asked me what trademarks were, I kind of listed 5 general categories of, your business name, your logo, a slogan, hashtag, or color. All of those are different different uses of your mark, right? And if you have maybe 2 categories that you're doing, maybe I'm going to sell t-shirts and I'm going to sell an educational platform as well. Those are 2 categories. And if I have 5 marks, I have to do 5 marks in 2 separate categories off top without even assessing attorney fees. Right. I have 2 categories times 5 things, 10 application fees that I have to pay. A minimum. They have a scale of application depending on the complexity of information you have to provide. And at a minimum, you're paying $250. So
for each
mark in each category.
So curiously, you talk about a color. Is the color has to be tied to a logo, or because you obviously can't just
put any color.
Any color. You can't. 1405. No.
Go to the hex code, figure it out, type it in. No. That's such a great question. And so y'all can tell I'm like a little bit of a nerd and a geek around this stuff. I've done research and figured it out. So a great example of this,
we clearly did it.
An example of that is Tiffany & Co.
Yeah.
Their color,
that turquoise,
is unique to them. Now, we've seen a lot of people take the color and use it, but in jewelry, you will never see anyone take that color.
So you can take that color for that category.
That category. That's the loophole. Yep, that's one of the many loopholes. And so you see a lot of people use it for, nail colors now. Like, honestly, the color has taken off in every other color. But in jewelry, Tiffany & Co. will always be the company.
So is Louboutin red?
For the red bottoms?
For the red bottoms, right. Yeah.
They are definitely, and they also have some patents with that as well.
Yeah,
so
there's a couple of companies that
Absolutely. No, they were. I remember that. That was a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of companies started trying to knock off. And now there's a new shoe company. He has like a blue bottom. I can't think of who he is. It's actually a pretty color blue. That is for his shoes.
And
I don't know.
Trademark.
I'm not sure that it's trademark, but to me, I just see him doing something similar to
Louis Vuitton.
I don't know if it's going to take off.
Can they do that? Because at the end of the day,
yes, of course.
Louis is probably like the first ones to do it, correct? So can you? I don't want to use the word steal that idea, but it's basically you're taking from one resource or one idea and then trying to adapt it to something else. Can you do that?
Yeah, you can. The hard part about it is they have a really hard time tracing back the original idea of it, right? Okay. Which is why it just has to be unique enough for your brand to set you apart in your category. That's as much as they can try to limit it. So although he's in shoes as well, it's not a red color. So he's doing a different color. And because of that, he can register it. And it can't say, oh, well, Louis Vuitton was the first ever to have a staple bottom shoe. We don't know that, right? Maybe somebody else in the 1700s created the idea. We have no idea, right? So they don't want to go as far as to limit the generality of it, right? It's just the specific, what your brand is, that is what we're going to protect. Your brand is a red bottom shoe. That is what we're going to protect. We're not going to limit people from having a purple bottom or a green bottom. Obviously, consumers will probably look at that and say, you're trying to be like Louis Vuitton. But the trademark commission and other stuff, they're not going to limit that.
Well, it has to be something that differentiates you seriously from
that's a requirement
from everybody else, because you can't say like a trend. Right. So if you pick up the trend and rose gold is a trend and everybody's doing rose gold, you can't say, oh, I'm gonna just do rose gold now.
No, seriously, it's a requirement for your trademark, which is why I always recommend, even if you don't use an attorney, just consult with an attorney, because your mark does have to be unique. You're gonna waste your money and your time going through the process if it's not unique enough to actually qualify. Now, to your point with trends, I have seen people register trends, and sometimes they are approved. Now, the problem with that, and you posed the question earlier, and I was kind of getting to it. But the problem with that, and kind of what I'm trying to remember specifically what your question was. I think it was around the complexity of the different registrations, right? And like the expense of it, or some of the do's and don'ts. The issue with protecting your mark, right? So say that it's a popular trend. I can't think of any popular trends right now. Whatever a popular trend is, right? To say, I don't know, go daddy. Right. GoDaddy, right? Which is the name of an actual company, I know. But if that was a trend as like a slogan, right? Like we would say that for your friend when they're dancing and they're really getting it, like, oh, GoDaddy, whatever. If that were the case, I'm using it different than the internet company, right? Than their website, their domain, in a different category. But the rest of the world is using the trend as well. Everybody is saying it. Nobody has trademarked it. Right. But I can go ahead and trademark it, right? So for my clients and my process, I at a minimum, when we start out, there are not two categories. There are two fields that I'm always researching, and that is the actual trademark database, and there is the market research that is done. Because if you get approved in the database, right, and they approve you, they give you the reinforcement behind it to protect your mark and your brand, but the market is saturated, it's going to cost you a fortune to stake claim over there. How can I go over there and say, if everybody is saying GoDaddy, I'm the one who trademarked it though, right? I own it, but now I have to go, they're going to back me and say, oh, you own it. But I have to go out and I have to enforce. I have to sue, and I have to send all those cease and desist letters. I have to negotiate and stop using my name and monitor it, right? It's going to cost you more to protect that, and it's not worth it. So I advise my clients of that up front. Hey, it's available in the database, but it's not always a good use of it. Don't register that.
Like when LeBron tried to trademark Taco Tuesday, right? So but that was already everybody does.
But he got some sponsorships off of that, so he played that well.
And for instance, so Tom Brady tried to trademark Tom Terrific.
Oh yeah.
Right, but that's Tom Seaver. And everybody knows that's Tom Seaver, and he was rejected.
Yeah. So seriously,
because they know.
While we on this topic, what about collaborations? Like I see Supreme trying to collaborate with other brands. How does that play a role? Does that impact the trademarking because it's still sales, right? Because it's one company versus the next company, correct?
Yeah. It's a lot of different ways that happens. More than likely, what's happening is a artistic piece of work is being created, which is going to be a copyright, not a trademark. Now, a trademark can also coexist with the copyright. Doesn't mean one is exclusive over the other. But with Supreme and just their field and what they do, more than likely a copyright is coming about, which is they will probably, not probably, they do. They have licensing agreements, right? So who's going to get the royalties based off of what is sold and what part of the project somebody contribute to versus the other is how that's going to be discussed. Trademarks can be co-owned by multiple people. So it doesn't have to be exclusively Supremes. It can be the person that they're collaborating with. Those are all conversations that will happen in negotiation of solidifying the deal. Same thing with, LeBron in his shoes with Nike. Who's getting, their negotiations are a little different, right? They cut him a multi-figure $1 million contract, right? And they get some exclusive rights and they get to use his name and use his branding and come up with ideas and concepts however they want to, right? However, say he was more involved in the process, like, oh, I really want to make sure the shoes are comfortable or something like that, and he wanted a very active role in it. They could definitely break that down and negotiate something different where we're going to give you a lesser upfront flat fee, but then we're also going to give you ownership of the trademarks, right? So if you go and you look up the LeBron James, which I'm sure he has a trademark on his own name, and he's giving Nike permission to use his trademark. But if you go look at the LeBron James shoes and the actual registration of the trademark and how they're selling it, I assure you Nike owns that 100%.
I think that that was the same kind of deal that Kobe had. Kobe wanted hands-on. So I think his was more, it wasn't more of a contract with the athlete, it's more co-ownership. Exactly. Because he wanted more hands-on.
Which is very smart. A lot of celebrities are getting into that now. I know Ariana Grande has negotiated some things like that. But the one she came after Beyonce, right? So one of the, an example, and we're kind of getting out of the trademark talk with it, but it applies for trademarks, and really the emphasis on it is a licensing agreement. There's a license produced when we create this, and I'm giving you ownership or use of it. But the greatest example was Beychella, what they deemed it. But when she did Coachella, she was very like, I'm going to take lower amount because I want to have rights to this. And then she turned around and sold it to Netflix. Right. And was able to make a residual income off of it because it doesn't end with Netflix. They have streaming rights. So as many times as the stream, she's continuously making money off of it. Right. So she took a lower upfront fee with Coachella to get ownership of it. So then she could go ahead and sell it.
Then Beyonce did something similar to that too. Where
That's Beyonce. Okay. Yeah, I know I said Beychella, so it kind of threw it off. Yeah. That's what they dubbed it after she did it. Like, that's what it is. Yeah, DJ Khaled was like, it'll never be called Coachella again. They need to officially name it Beychella.
So to circle back when we're talking about partnerships,
right?
Let's just rein it in a little bit to the people that maybe don't have Beyonce money yet or Beyonce status yet.
The reality, starting from the basics. Listen, we in the gym.
Y'all will eventually get there. You guys will eventually get there. We're trying to help you guys out right now. So we're going to try to get to covering, protecting yourself where you have a partnership with somebody. So how does that differentiate from if you're a sole proprietor? How do you protect yourself as far as trademarks, as far as just anything when you're starting a business? What should you think about first, when you are going into an equal partnership, and then say you have a majority ownership or a minority ownership? What should you think about?
Listen, this is so good. So I just want to touch on it because we were talking about there's different collaborations with the trademarking, and that's more so of a contractual agreement. But you're touching upon entity setup and ownership within an entity. And it's so many different considerations. Honestly, the world is your oyster, literally. You sit down with your partners, you have a discussion with them, and you decide what you want. But the important part about that is to make sure it is reduced down to a written contract that actually express what each role is going to do. Who owns what percentage of the company, right? What each payout is going to be, who has the rights to what, right? You are going to have the right to sell your ownership if in the event of this happening. You won't have the right to sell your ownership. for the most part, I would say 90% of that contract is completely you can edit it however you want to edit it, right? So it's going to be based upon what you and your partner or other people have decided upon, or if it's just you, what you decide you want to do with your company, right? So you want to make sure you reduce it down to a contract, though. In most states, it's required. For a LLC, it's going to be an operating agreement. Partnerships, operating agreement. Sole proprietorships don't require one because you're not technically registered. But if you have a corporation of any sort, you're going to have a bylaw that dictates what your rules and regulations are. Basically, it governs how you operate as a business. Because you are the owner, that agreement is basically clarifying. As the business, this is what the business requires, and as the owner, this is what I am going to fulfill and carry out as the owner of the business. So
my question is this, right? So where is it that they explain all this? Because the assumption is that if I get an LLC, if I incorporate, or if I get an S corp, whatever the case may be, that I'm protected, right? So I guess the question is, where do you find this information? Or I need to find a lawyer to break down all these details.
Can I interject?
Yeah, go ahead.
So what I'd like to say is we're just spewing these terms: LLC, sole proprietorship, and then you have incorporated, right? So if you can just give us a brief synopsis on just an explanation on what each definition is.
Can I first say how I love this? Because I was brought in for trademarking, but we are talking about all the areas that I operate in, and I love it because I'm like, this is what I do. I love it. So great question. So we're now in the world of entities, right? Mm-hmm. And so there are several different types of entity. A sole proprietor is the first level, and a sole proprietor, congratulations if you have a business or a hobby that you're doing and you have not officially set it up with a state. You are a sole proprietor. You're just out there. You have sole responsibility for anything that happens.
Like an Etsy artist, or
there is no example. So if I started a business and I'm selling it to my friends and my family and I'm making money and income off of it, I am a sole proprietor.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just someone who is in a business but has not officially taken the step to register the business as a sole proprietor. Right. Mm-hmm. And then you have an LLC, which is a limited liability company, and you register that with your state. It's the most common, it's the easiest entity to set up. It does not always mean it's the best entity structure for you, depending on your future goals or what your plans are for maintaining the business. You might want to reconsider filing an LLC. It does have some tax advantages, so all of your income passes through to you as an individual through a Schedule C. So make sure you advise with your accountants people. I'm an attorney, not a accountant,
But there's a big difference between having an S corp or C corp.
Absolutely.
Tax purposes versus the benefits of having it as a legal entity.
Absolutely. And sometimes they can go hand in hand, which is why I always advise people to talk with an accountant as well as consult with an attorney, because you want to make sure that your goals are aligning up and making sense for you, depending on what your business is.
So in layman's terms, can you please explain what you're talking about?
All right. So in there's two
She's
options.
Here to keep us in check. In layman's terms. Y'all get into the big people terms.
Yeah. So basically, you can have your corporation or whatever it is, whether it's LLC, S corp, or C corp, but it could be beneficial for you for tax purposes.
So an S corp and C corp, what is the difference between an S corp and C corp?
Well, you want me to chime in on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Not from the tax point, but an S corp actually is kind of a blend between a C corp and a LLC. So an S corp gives you the structure of some of the shares and the stakeholders that a corporation does without the tax burden of a corporation. Corporations are double taxed. The entity is taxed as well as the individual owner. So if you are an owner plus you have stake in the company, you're going to get double tax on it, right? So most people they want to circumvent that, which is why being taxed as an S corp, it basically allows you to be a corporation with all of those features, but get taxed as an LLC. So you only get taxed one time as a pass-through entity on the Schedule C versus the double taxation of a C corp.
So those terms vary state to state?
No. So these are entities that just are, every state recognizes them. And they have the same pass-through because, once again, taxes are federal, right? There are some state taxes that apply and things like that. But how you are taxed from an entity standpoint it's going to filter through the same way.
So
Versus the rates are going to change on the state level, but federally is where it most is important.
So where would you suggest that some of our listeners would go to if they wanted to start a company to get more information on how they should set themselves up?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think the SBA.gov is a great one, the Small Business Association. They have a lot of information around the different types of entities. Consulting with a business attorney is great. I'm very passionate about educating. If you cannot tell from this interview, I get excited. I love talking about this stuff. I can do it all day in the middle of the night, and everyone knows I'm a grandma, so I be sleeping. But it literally just, I get energetic and I get passionate and I want to talk about it. But to that point, I have an online legal educational platform where startup companies and businesses.
Hold on a second. She told me about it. I didn't even know. I didn't know. And then I'm gonna be honest. Listen. Christine was like, she got a platform where she educates entrepreneurs. I'm like, really?
I do.
But please continue.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Look
it's fairly new.
Well, 2 out of 3 of us know about it. So why don't we let one of the two?
My bad. Go ahead.
Give us some information.
Listen, just a little bit of grace. Yeah. It is fairly new. It just officially launched a couple of weeks ago. New. Yes, it's been in my heart and it's been a work in the background for years. So I'm so excited that it's finally launched. But it's an online platform for just honestly startups and entrepreneurs who want to educate themselves about it, right? Let's be honest. With Google, you can figure stuff out. But if you don't know something, you don't know to go Google it, right? And so even with that, if you do know something, Google has a plethora of information. It can be overwhelming. It can be time consuming. You're just kind of going through things. You don't really know what you're looking for. And so my online platform provides a practical, reliable, and it's coming from a credible reference and source, right? Because I am a licensed attorney. But I'm not your attorney on this, but I've taken my education, my passion, and my field as an entrepreneur and working with over hundreds, many people. I started my first business at 16, right? So I've been in this for half of my life at this point, literally. And so that
Salud,
experience.
By the way, you need to grab the glass. You've been slow pipping.
Salud.
Go ahead. But that's a big accomplishment, but continue.
Thank you. So the online educational platform, it walks people through exactly what I'm talking about, right? It provides contract templates for what type of contract you need. If you go and you're like, oh, what's an operating agreement? I don't know. We have a description of what that is. Actually, we have instructions on how you're going to customize this for your business, why you want to be filling this in, which is so important for startup businesses. A lot of people don't want to talk about this, but startup businesses, in my heart, I believe they're more at risk and vulnerable if they get sued versus the 500 companies. Like I mentioned before, your sacrifice, all of the time that you've invested in your business away from your family. If someone comes and sues you and you don't have the right legal infrastructure in place, it's not just taking your business away, it's setting you back. All of that investment and that time that you have is now null and void and gone. Where the Fortune 500, they don't even get to lawsuits most of the time because they're settling out frivolous cases of no value because they just don't have time for it. They're like, we don't want to deal with this. Here, send them a check. Yeah. Go about your business. But small startup businesses who are trying to build that up for themselves and don't have that chat, somebody comes and sues them, you're taking them out in everything that they've worked and were trying to build to leave the legacy behind them, right? So my heart is really about empowering and educating those people to make the best of everything.
I'm glad you touched on that because one of the things that I noticed is that you definitely need a lawyer. You definitely need somebody that understands corporate law, trademark, and how to structure things, and et cetera, et cetera. But with you, as a lawyer, you don't practice in every state. So, yes or no?
Depending on the area.
Right.
So with trademarking, intellectual property, it's federal most of the time. So I can do that in different areas because it's a federal law.
But as far as like other things, litigation, things like that.
I don't do litigation at all.
Oh, you don't do litigation.
And here's why I don't do litigation at all. I am of the mindset, right? While all lawsuits cannot be prevented, because like I mentioned before, even Fortune 500 companies, people can sue you for anything. They can sue you for frivolous matters that have no merit whatsoever. And you negotiate those out, right? And they just happen. And the higher up you get, the more accessible you are, more, in view of the public, the more at risk you are for those type of suits. But small businesses, you really don't have to deal with that. But if you have the right legal foundation, if you have the right legal structure, if you have the right contracts in place, if you have protected your intellectual property, you have mitigated on the forefront your need to have litigation in cases in the first place. So I am all about being proactive. Let's get these things in place. Let's build upon these three stones for protection, right? Okay. Layer upon a layer upon a layer of protection. Exactly. Okay. Seriously. So when a suit comes, guess what? It's frivolous. We can lock this down and get this thrown away with summary judgment and not have to go to court. Or even with that, right? My contracts, I don't do a contract without an arbitration agreement. There's no way. We're not going to court with this. You're not going to draw my client out in this. And, there's no point. There are matters and things that you can do on the forefront to really protect yourself to never end up in court, period.
And we can't stress how important that is.
That's
you can't stress how important that is when this is your livelihood. And this is
seriously.
And, with people like Lauran that really are invested in people and in protecting people, I think you just have to consider there's a cost in the beginning, but it could save you so much more at the end. So it's very important to do your homework, to make sure you have, you cover yourself and you have the right people behind you, like people like Lauran that can really have your back and know the law. Because when you're doing your own, or starting your own business, or you have so many other things to worry about that you should have somebody, especially with legal things, that really has an understanding of the law to be able to handle that for you. So it's very critical that you take care of yourself, because you have to protect yourself, you have to protect your family, the people that are dependent on you in your businesses. And once you have that foundation, then you don't have to worry about that moving forward, right? So, and I think it's just really important to invest in protection and protecting yourself. And I just want to say, people like Lauran are very valuable. And just understand that even if it's not Lauran, it should be somebody that you know and trust, and especially when you're just starting out. It's just very important to have these type of people that can understand those things when you're worried about
and
other
guide
things.
you too.
Yeah, have your back and support you, really. No, that's so good.
One thing, coming from Christine, because Christine has a sales background, extensive sales background. She's
licensing,
been doing everything. So she really knows her stuff when it comes to sales. And when it comes to litigation or things as far as making sure that things are in place, she values that.
Right.
So for her to say this, that tells you how much value you have in the information that you're sharing. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, you just have to protect yourself at all times, because you can be an artist, you can be brilliant, and it's in 2 seconds,
those are the people who are the most vulnerable.
Because they're the most vulnerable, and there's people out there. I mean, they're like piranhas. They're out there.
They're waiting. Oh my God. Stop talking about your great ideas and going into these meetings just without having NDAs.
Do it and cover yourself, because somebody else is going to do it.
Yeah. And they have the money, they have the resources. So you come in, you share this idea, your passion, you share your vision with them, and they're positioned to do that, right? You're like, hey, I want to partner with you. I want to get you in on this. And they're like, oh, great. Now that I have your idea, I don't need you anymore.
Right.
I'm just going to go and do it.
And my lawyers took care of it.
I have had clients time after time, at least for a while in my firm. I was so discouraged because it was happening multiple times a week. And honestly, I really know that the online platform, the Legal No, was stemmed from that, because it's like, hey, they are going in desperate and wanting to really get their vision off the ground. And people are taking advantage of them because they don't have the resources or the funds to hire an attorney right now. But they're losing ideas. One story in particular, they've been meeting for months and months with this investor and giving them the ideas. And one day they showed up to a meeting. They were locked out of the building, and they could inside look and see that everything that they had talked about, the investor literally had inventory on the floor. They had stolen the entire idea. They had no agreements in place. They had anything. So they called me and they're frantic and they're like, what can we do? And unfortunately, my response was little to nothing. You don't have any contracts in place. You don't have any proof that this was your idea.
And for the
listeners,
listeners,
what's going to stop them from saying that it was their idea, right? And they're like, well, we have some emails, and while you can compile emails and try to make it a written agreement, it's still going to be left up to the judge, the interpretation of it, because there was no official meeting of the minds, which is required for agreements to be formed, right? I'm getting into the legalese terms of it, but do stuff with context.
Yeah, with the listeners and the viewers right now, that might be the most valuable lesson you're going to get out of this, because if anything, allow somebody else to teach you that lesson and don't try to learn it yourself.
Don't do it. It's costly. Yeah. It's costly. It's costly.
Yeah. This has been an awesome interview. And I just want to say thank you.
What? Right? It's over already? Y'all done got me fired up. My little juju is going. I'm ready.
I didn't say it's over.
We might do a part two.
But no, this has been amazing, because there was a lot of valuable information. And when you go through the cycle of sales cycle, whether it's sales cycle, whether it's going through the law side of it, there's certain things that you say, like, all right, I got to make sure I got things in place. I got to make sure that I'm protected. I got to make sure that I got the right team around me to make sure that I move forward properly, because like Christine said, there's a lot of piranhas out there that's ready to bite. Right. So this has been so much information that has so much value, and we appreciate it, and we want to say thank you from Christine and I. And I just want to say, listen, what made you go on this journey? I like to ask these people. I like to ask people this question, because I want to know what inspired you to say, this is the route that I wanted to go into. This is what made me say, this was for me. And in your case, I see the passion, I see the love, I see the knowledge, the information. So what made you say, this is my route, and what inspired me to go through this route? What was the aspiration?
Yeah, no, I think that's so great. And so I think for me, I've kind of created a niche, and I've done some litigation. I've kind of journeyed into it, but I think my passion is the pre-litigation, because I've seen so many people become, like I mentioned, vulnerable in that area, and just the lack of knowledge, the lack of support from attorneys wanting to nickel and dime them. They're just a number, right? And so I was having a lot of clients who couldn't afford me, but they needed protection. And so my heart was crying out. And so I would compromise, and I'm like, well, I'll just do it pro bono, or I'll just do that. And at some point that compromises my business, right? Where my customer service is declining because I have paid customers who can't get access to me because I'm over here doing some other stuff, right? And I really just had to take a look back and say, hey, I'm passionate about this and I want to help these people, but it's really not working for my current business model, right? I'm dropping the ball over here. I'm still not really being able to support and serve them the way that I can. Where's the middle ground for this? How can I be successful in my full on service, but still provide some type of resource to these people, right? And so I think the passion is just there. Like, I think passion isn't something you can force. It's just something that you're wired for. It's just something that you breathe. And so I'm passionate about helping people. If anyone asks me, they're like, oh, I'm going to call you an attorney or Esquire. I'm like, call me Lauran. Because I'm a servant above all else. That's my name. Call me Lauran. I don't need any title of any sort. My name is Lauran, right? And so even my uncles, like growing up, they'll tell you, like, I was so adamant about, like, oh, let me take your tray and like throw it away and do all that. My heart is really to serve people. So that passion was always there. And when I saw the need for people, I really just kind of saw it and said, well, I have a skill set and I have something that can provide a need. How do I do that? And so the legal no was honestly, it's a mirror of what I do with activated law. I'm passionate about both what I do, protecting, being proactive with it. One's I'm just a little bit more hands-on. The other one, I'm just providing a resource for people, right? But they mirror each other. They do this exact same thing, the exact same practice areas, but it allows me to touch everybody, from the people who are just starting out, from the people who are all the way up, who don't have the time and the means to go and research things and figure it out. They need to hire me to do it for them, but I can still help those who are starting out, who have more time than they have financial resources at the time. So I love helping people and seeing literally activated law. The name of my firm comes from, I'm called to activate the purpose in you and to use the law to protect you and go forth in your purpose to do what you are called to do. So
it's amazing.
Truly inspirational.
Yeah.
Really, coming from a female.
I know.
It's truly inspirational.
Thank you so much.
Because, some people don't know how to help others with their expertise, right? And you found a way. So I just applaud you for that. And I think, you want to applaud.
Yeah. Let's
just do that. Let's cheers to that.
Let's
we like to cheers.
You behind.
Yeah,
we've been waiting for you for some time now.
It was my point. It was the point.
So we had to pregame.
We had to pregame, and you're literally like a few drinks behind. Yeah.
So
no, Christine is right. Thank you. And for women, that's very for young girls that's looking up and that's really looking to see what path they could go into. That's one of the paths that you setting out for them to say, okay, I could look into doing something like this.
And beyond women, it's people that aspire to just own. Yeah.
True.
And own their own business and, really have control of their career and control of their destiny, and they just need a little bit of help from other people. So, just on behalf of all those people, I'd like to say thank you. On behalf of all those people, I'd like to say thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
I think that's so needed. You just said something and like inside it's like, say this. I'm like burning to say it. And I think so many people are afraid to go out and take that leap, and they're like, how do I get started? How do I do this? And honestly, in the words of Nike, just do it, right? You figure it out as you go along, and resources will come to you. And if you're passionate about it, it honestly, you won't be able to shake it if you're passionate about it. It will literally hunt you down. And so one of the things for me, even in law school, I think I fought it so hard because the stigmas that come with attorneys, right? Where they are not compassionate, where they are just about the money. They are, it's kind of the good old boys club where you're just a number. They don't know you by name and you call them, you can never get a hold of them. And so when I first started my firm, I was very, very passionate about having a firm that was set apart and never fell into that stigma, right? And so that's why I said, like, as I began to want to help people more and took on that burden and that declined for me, I had to take a step back and pause because I said, hey, this isn't the service I want to deliver on. This isn't what I want to be. This isn't what I started my firm on. How can I do both equivalently, right? Like, how can I provide it and be a resource for these people, but also show up and be of service to these people, right? And service to me is, honestly, when I'm vetting my clients and I do the consultation, if I'm not really passionate about your project and what you're doing, I've reached the point in my firm, I'm not even accepting you as a client because I want to talk to you and get excited where I'm pumped to do my work for you, right? It really drives me to go forth and do that for you. And if it's not, I'm like, hey.
But that's when you have control.
Yeah. And it's important to get there. And I encourage people that even though it might be hard, to start there. Don't compromise in the beginning and trying to get to the money or get to whatever goal you feel like is more important. Start there, because once you start there, it makes it easier for you to cut out the path that you want to be in. And listen, right. Absolutely. It starts now. It starts right now. And don't compromise in the beginning. That foundation is so important, right? Which is why for me, I think it was so easy for me to take a step back and realize, a year or two into my firm saying, hey, okay, things have fallen off. Things don't look like what I wanted it to look like. I need to make some changes with this. But my foundation was solid. My foundation on what my passion was and why I was starting my firm, what I wanted to do, how I wanted to look different from other people. Even the name of my firm, right? Most people are Morgan and Morgan, right? Lauran Morgan firm, and no. And it just, even my friends, when I was like throwing that name out, they wouldn't let me settle on that. They're like, that's so boring. That's so traditional. Lawyer, you're nothing like that, Lauran. You're full of passion. You're so exciting. When people work with you, you don't remind us of traditional lawyers. Your firm name cannot be traditional, right? And so even Activated Law, most firms don't have a non-traditional name like that, right? So my foundation from the very beginning, I made sure that I was cut from a different cloth. And I was intentional about that. So even when things went astray, it's like, hey, that's not my foundation. That's not my root. I can come back to this. Do not compromise in the beginning. You cannot afford to.
So interestingly enough, like you can apply that, like your resource, right, for people that want to start business, but you're also an inspiration because you have your own business, right? True. And right now, all of that advice, exactly what you just said is going to be valuable to these entrepreneurs as well. Not just the legal stuff, but just your example. So no, I'm really serious. Like just your example, and it's inspirational to differentiate yourself from the next, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what's going to make you successful, right? And so I just want to say, you're a great resource and you have so much more to offer. So if you can just tell people where they can reach you, like if you could tell our viewers and our listeners where they can reach you, because you obviously know what you're doing. Yeah. You obviously have so much more to offer. You obviously have the answers to a lot of questions. Like if you could just share where they can reach you, your resources that you offer, then that would be very helpful as well.
Absolutely. Okay. So, as I mentioned before, my firm is Activated Law, and the online platform that I keep mentioning is called The Legal Know. So, The Legal Know is found at thelegalknow.co, and it's KNO, so like a play, for your reference and your knowledge that you are getting from the platform. And it's a play on it's like a pun intended. So no more legal issues, because now you are in the know. So listen, right?
Like
so thelegalknow.co. And then also, if you guys want to contact me, you can go to activatedlaw.com and book a consultation, or you can email me directly at info@activatedlaw.com.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. This is so great.
Yeah.
Christine,
Thank you.
This is it. Thank you.
I know. No, thank you guys for your patience and waiting on pilots and other people who are out of my control, weather, turbulence.
Nah.
We actually we owe you, because you gave us so much knowledge. You gave Stanley knowledge, me knowledge, all our viewers and listeners knowledge, and we're gonna take it from here, and hopefully we can get some success stories out of this.
Please. Oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
Just anything.
We love to hear the success stories after everybody applies.
Even if you just take it and you go to Google and you figure it out, that is my heart to educate. So please share them with me when they come back. I hope this helps someone in any capacity to be encouraged at a minimum. Even if you're just encouraged, let me know. Like, hey, we're here for that too, right? It's so good.
Encourage us. Do we count?
Absolutely. Every person.
All right, guys. It's been great. I just want to say thank you to my co-host Christine, Lauran, for just coming here, dropping so much jewels. Everybody have a good night. Thank you, guys.
Good night.
Good night.